Hello, today we're continuing lesson 5.4. We're going to factor and then solve, except the differences between our normal solving is we're going to find the real number solutions. And we'll talk about that when we start solving and get what x actually equals. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Number one, you should recognize that you can take an x out of both of these terms. So we're left with x to the fourth minus 25 equals 0. I'm hoping that you recognize that this is the difference of two squares. So we have x times x squared minus 5 times x squared plus 5. Now, this is as far as we can factor any of these parentheses. We're going to set each factor equal to 0 and solve. So when we set this parenthesis equal to 0, we add 5 to both sides, we get x squared equals 5, and then we have to square root it. So remember, when you put in a square root, we're going to get a plus and minus. This one, we're going to get x squared plus 5 equals 0. You're going to get x squared equals negative 5, and then you're going to square root it. Can we take the square root of a negative number? Well, we can, but we would have an imaginary answer, which is not real. So our real answers are going to be 0, because we don't want you to forget about that one, square root of 5, and the negative square root of 5. Okay, let's go ahead and try the next problem. This is factoring by grouping because I can recognize that there are 4 terms. So in this problem, this side I'm going to take out an m squared. So we're left with m plus 6. This one I'm going to take out a negative 4. So we're left with an m plus 6. We're going to go ahead and rewrite the parenthesis that we have 2 of. We're going to factor that out. And then we're going to write our leftovers. This leftover can be factored further. So we're going to have m plus 6. And then m minus 2 and m plus 2. We're going to set each of these factors equal to 0, so it's going to give me negative 6, positive 2, and negative 2. And all of those are real, so they all work. Okay, let's go ahead and try the next 2 problems. Okay, in this problem, we can go ahead and factor out a greatest common factor, which in this case would be a 4x. When I do that, I'm left with x to the fourth minus 10x squared plus 9. This is actually easy trinomial factoring, except that we have an x to the fourth, so we have to make sure that our first terms are x squareds. What multiplies to give us positive 9 and adds to give us negative 10 would be negative 9 and negative 1. Both of these are difference of perfect squares. This one we can factor further to be an x plus 3, x minus 3. This one we can factor further to be an x plus 1 and an x minus 1. We're going to set each factor equal to 0, and we get 0, negative 3, positive 3, negative 1, positive 1. Those are all of our answers. They're all real, so they all work. Now this problem doesn't equal 0 yet, so the first thing we need to do is move over the 120. So I get 2n to the fourth minus 8n squared minus 120 equals 0. In this problem I could factor a 2 out of everything, so I'm going to be left with n to the fourth minus 4n squared minus 60 equals 0. Then this is actually easy trinomial factoring. Again, though, the first terms have to multiply to be n to the fourth. So we know in our parentheses we're going to have an n squared and an n squared. But all we have to do is what multiplies to give us a negative 60 and adds to give us a negative 4. When we do that, that would be negative 10 and positive 6. Remember, we're going to set each parenthesis equal to 0. We don't need to set this 2 equal to 0 because there's no variable here. So 2 does not equal 0. That doesn't make sense. So when I do this problem, I end up adding 10 to both sides. So I get n squared equals 10. Then I square root. So I'm going to get plus and minus root 10. This one, I get n squared plus 6 equals 0. I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides. So I get n squared equals negative 6, and then I square root both sides. So I'm going to get the square root of a negative number, which is not going to be real. So my only real solutions in this problem is the square root of 10 and the negative square root of 10. Okay, I have 2 problems I would like you to try on your own. Look at the examples as you do them. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, Go ahead, write it at the bottom of this paper. We'll discuss it tomorrow in class. Please make sure that I'm looking for the real number solutions. Okay, see you tomorrow.